Hello everyone, so this is the video lecture on well-crafted arguments, page 70 to 86 in your book. So yeah, so well-crafted arguments, what are they? Well, we've already been kind of doing them, right? So whenever we symbolize, let me get my tablet working again, there we go. Whenever we symbolize an argument, something like this, so like faith in B, A, therefore B. Whenever we symbolize it like this is going to be a well-crafted argument. What does it mean to be well-crafted? Well, the chapter, you can read through the chapter. I'm going to go over the kind of steps that they suggest for constructing a well-crafted argument. So the first one, the first step is to identify premises and conclusions, or the conclusion. Basically, it's usually going to be one. Sometimes there can be multiple, but we aren't going to get that tricky, at least not on the test or anything. So identify premises and conclusions. So you start with a hunk of text, right? A bunch of text, and you just try to identify what the premises and the conclusion are. So you're not concerned about like pulling out, like symbolizing it in variables or getting to that kind of if A then B kind of format yet. But you are worried about, okay, what's the structure of this passage, right? What is the logical structure? So you're going to look for what are the reasons that are supporting a conclusion. What kind of statement is being supported by the premises? That kind of stuff. So so we're going to define the premises and conclusion. That's step one. A little one on the side there. That's a really weird one. What's going on? Sorry, my hand was like dragging on the tablet. I'm still trying to get used to this. Two. So we want to eliminate excess verbiage. What does that mean? Well, verbiage is just language. So they give a number of examples of this. So it's just a word or statement that adds nothing to the argument, right? It doesn't have any argumentative value. So that could be something like what they call a discount. So it's like acknowledgement of a fact or possibility that might be thought to render the argument invalid, weak, or unsound, or uncogent. So we might start off by saying like some may think that cats aren't mammals, but really they are mammals, and then they give a bunch of reasons for that, right? That little part that says like some may think that cats aren't mammals, like that's not part of the argument. They're giving an argument for why cats are mammals, not for why they aren't, or they might consider that option later and explain why that's not the case, but that's not part of the argument, right? So that would be a discount. Rhetorical elements. So these increase the kind of like psychological persuasiveness, right? So when someone speaks well, right, when someone adds in a lot of nice kind of nuances into their words and their writing, right, we tend to be more persuaded. But that doesn't have anything to do with the actual logical force. Someone can give you, politicians are great at this, right? They give you an invalid argument, or they give you a bad argument, a logically bad argument, but it sounds really good, right? Or they really know how to emotionally appeal to us, right? But the argument itself might not be a very good argument. So we want to avoid those rhetorical elements. We want to avoid repetition, so restating a premise or a conclusion or altering the wording in a way that's not necessary. And we want to avoid including assurances. So assurance is a statement, word, or phrase that indicates that the author is confident of a premise or inference. So politicians do this a lot. Like a politician might say, I strongly believe that that AR automatic rifles should be banned. That strongly believe part, that's not necessary, right? All we want to know is just that they think that the AR rifle should be banned. That's all that matters, right? For the purposes of logically evaluating that argument. A hedge is a statement, word, or phrase that indicates that the arguer is tentative. So a hedge, so again, politicians might use this, right? Like, someone might be like, well, I think it's a good goal to, I think universal healthcare is a good goal, but I'm not confident that we can reach that goal. We're not concerned about that at all. That doesn't have anything to do with the argument. What we want to know is, do they think that universal healthcare is possible or not, right? So we want to get rid of that kind of wishy-washy language, and we want to, distill the words down to like the kind of core meaning. We want to, part of this process as well, is identifying what the authors call the proper term is an enthymeme. What is that? It's just an argument with an implicit premise or conclusion. So if I say Rex is a cat, then if Rex is a cat, then Rex is a mammal, and that's my first premise. And then I just conclude that Rex is a mammal. We should assume in this case that that there's this hidden premise that I didn't include originally, which says Rex is a cat. So sometimes authors won't give all their premises, but this is something that they're just assuming, that Rex is a cat, right? And that goes to, so we want to, for our third step, we want to unify the language. So we might say here, like, Rex is a feline. If Rex is a feline, then Rex is a mammal. Rex is a cat, therefore Rex is a mammal. We should either put feline or we should put cat, right? We want to keep the language as uniform as possible. Be fair and charitable. So that goes back to enthymemes, right? These kind of hidden premises. So notice that there was a hidden premise in this argument, right? But we could have chosen not to identify that. We could have chosen instead to assume that the author's just jumping from this conditional statement to this statement about Rex, right? That Rex is a mammal. But that would be very uncharitable, right? Because we should be able to see that, oh, this is actually a modus ponens argument, but the author didn't include this statement. So we could either kind of capitalize on the fact that they didn't include it and assume that they just gave us this very, very weak, bad argument. Or we could assume, okay, let's just say they assume this, and let's make this argument as strong as possible. So being charitable means interpreting the argument so that's the strongest argument possible, even if the author made a mistake, like forgetting a premise or something like that. 5, we want to identify definitely what the conclusion is. So there could be other things that are sub-conclusions, right? So sometimes in arguments you'll get like a conditional statement, and then you'll get a modus ponens argument. There'll be a conclusion, but then that conclusion suddenly becomes another premise for another conclusion, right? That the first conclusion would therefore be a sub-conclusion. And then it's number 6 I already talked about with the principle of charity and the enthymeme. Just identify the hidden premises, right? That's all you have to do. So when you're translating from text to arguments, try to think about, okay, what are the premises, what are the conclusion? Start trying to symbolize those premises and put them and try to figure out the logical relationship with, like, the arrow, or an or statement, or and or not, those kinds of things. Translate it into a logical statement, and then and then go from there. So that's about it. We'll see more of what this looks like in the homework for this chapter. So stay tuned for that video. Thanks everyone. Have a good day.